What does your current level of emotional maturity say about your ability to collaborate and network with others, and in the context of creating greater prosperity for yourself? So I have a pretty amazing assessment that I'm going to share with you, and it's totally free. But there's something you need to know about me first, is that I love systems. I love structures. But I also have this kind of love-hate relationship with them. I do love structures, but then I like to take them apart. And then I like to reform them so that they can allow us to come at certain ideas from different angles, see things from different perspectives. And I love the Gene Keys so much. Yeah, shameless product placement here. I teach about it. I live and breathe from this kind of system in my life and how I create my life's work, because I think it's an incredible guideline. Is it rules for my life? No, but it is incredible. It's an incredible guideline for seeing how my particular gifts and skill sets work, and within the context of how they work better when I live with an open heart, how living with that open heart allows me to be open to greater levels of prosperity and abundance, how that affects my ability to communicate and connect and collaborate with other people, and contribute to the world. And all of these spheres are in your Gene Keys. So if you don't have your own Gene Keys hologenetic profile, that's okay, because you can go on the 𝐸𝐤�keys.com website and get yours. Just like you would create a birth chart for yourself, a natal birth chart that allows you to see the lining up of all the celestial events that were happening. It's like a snapshot of what was happening at your time of birth. The Gene Keys does the same thing, and it's kind of the blending of that astrology, but also with some human design and something beautifully esoteric and mysterious and wonderful that the Gene Keys just is. And if you know about them, then I'm telling you something you already know. But if you're new to them, they're incredibly accurate in helping you see how certain themes play out in your life. And not only that, but, and this isn't a teaching about the Gene Keys, not only that, but it allows you to see the different iterations and expressions of each sphere. Each sphere has a Gene Key for you that explains to you what was happening when this planet was here and the sun was here at your time of birth. And it allows you to see patterns that maybe unconsciously we haven't been able to tease out yet, and how those patterns play out with our shadows, meaning where we're not emotionally mature, and also where our gifts, our skills, our talents, our particular, nuanced ways of communicating and living and thriving in this world are unique to us. And so I love the Gene Keys as a system, but like I said, as I'm a natural innovator, I like to take those systems and I like to take them apart. When I was a kid, I used to take watches apart and then put them together again. Sometimes they didn't work again, but I like to see how things work. So I like to take things apart, and then I like to put them together, sometimes in new ways, and in ways that I'm always experimenting with. That's written all throughout my personal hologenetic profile, by the way, to be a visionary, to be an innovator, to experiment constantly, being willing to try new things, be willing to be endlessly inquisitive and curious. And that is littered throughout my hologenetic profile. It's certainly my approach to the way I do life, but it's also the approach to the way I do my life's work. And what's been amazing with this particular integration that I've been sharing with people privately, I'm about to share it in my Flourish group program coming up on the 24th of April, but I'm also going to share with you how I do this, how I break this down to do this integration between two different sequences in your Gene Keys hologenetic profile. So there are 3 overall. There's the activation sequence, I call it the genius sequence. There is the Venus sequence, which I taught a program about, which is called Love Fractal. And then there is the Pearl sequence, which is what I'm going to be teaching soon, but my own particular way of teaching and looking at the Pearl sequence Flourish program. That starts on the 24th of April. But what I've done is I've created this assessment, and I've been doing these private sessions for almost a month now. And there's just something incredible that happens, a kind of alchemy with overlapping these sequences on each other and being able to take spheres from these sequences and see how they holographically map onto each other. Now, your whole profile in the Gene Keys context is called the hologenetic profile. But the way I look at the Gene Keys, the way I interpret them, on top of my own intuitive acumen that I use to kind of see who I'm working with, and not just the spheres on a two-dimensional plane, but I'm looking at the whole person intuitively when I'm also doing their integration and their reading, is this overlapping. And I call it holographic mapping, of being able to take not even the spheres that line up in a sequence, but spheres from different sequences and seeing how they speak to each other. How do they inform each other? How do they have overlapping meanings and values and principles? And the messages of these spheres, the way they overlap and inform each other, they're not just unique to the spheres. We can do this with the lines. We can do it with the pathways. They can all be decoded together. And I'm giving you a free peek at how I do that. Now, yes, when I do these integration assessments for people one-on-one, there is my own intuition involved. But I'm basically peeling back the veil on how I created this system for looking at it, overlapping these sequences and reading them together. Because what it does is it kind of collapses time. So it can give you a much more profound, kind of zoomed in picture of how you can collapse time between, well, if I'm getting on board with the gifts in my, let's just say, culture sphere, how I collaborate and network with others, I can see how that works and speaks about my emotional intelligence, my EQ sphere. And what I've done is actually created a breakdown, a PDF breakdown of this assessment. And you have to understand something about the Gene Keys. You know, a lot of people, when they do a static teaching on the Gene Keys, they're not static. And I'm not saying Richard Rudd does that. He doesn't do that at all, the creator of the Gene Keys. But some people who teach the Gene Keys, they just look at the sequences themselves and look at them as if they exist in a vacuum. They don't. And so something about the Gene Keys to note that is really important is that they're not static. It's a living transmission. You know, it's not just a snapshot in time of what celestial events were taking place at your time of birth. It's a living transmission. And so most people don't look at the Gene Keys the way that I do, but what I found that looking at the Gene Keys in this way and being able to interpret and intuitively read people's profiles with them, it invites a whole different perspective for looking at how to collapse time between what it is that you want to do. Maybe you want to be doing something in your career, your business, your vocation, and you have this idea that maybe feels too big, too out there. What is it about your skill set? What is it about the things that are represented and spoken about in your hologenetic profile that say, here's maybe the best way to go about that for you. Here's maybe the shadow you need to work on to facilitate that a little bit better. And so, like I said, I'm giving you a free peek at how I do it. So this is a really powerful and nuanced thread to explore. How the emotional maturity, the EQ, the emotional intelligence sphere that's in your Venus sequence, how does that directly shape your ability to embody and express the frequency of culture in the Pearl sequence? And the culture in the Pearl sequence, because the Venus is all about love, the Pearl is all about prosperity, and your brand, meaning who are you as a person? That's your brand. It's also called life's work as a sphere. But the culture in the Pearl sequence, this is where prosperity weaves through relational dynamics, influence, collaborative flow. And I look at these shadows and gifts in an archetypal way. I take an archetypal overview of the two spheres, and that's how I break this down. That's really instructive. Each of your Gene Key spheres and each shadow, each gift expresses archetypal themes. The city is something else. because in each sphere you have three expressions. You have the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi. The siddhi is a Sanskrit word, but basically it means it's your superpower. It's your superpower expression. If you are the ultimate in living embodiment of the highest expression of this particular gene key and what it represents in that sphere, that's your siddhi. That's your superpower. So I take an archetypal view of these two spheres, and that's how I break this down in this PDF. And the thing is, you have this PDF, you can use it with any of your spheres because the steps are the same. So, you know, when people are interested in the Flourish program and they have been, you know, asking me questions about it, when I get super fired up about something and I'm offering a program or a service, I know that thing inside and out. Like it is, I know it better than I know my own, the back of my own hand. And I get excited and I jump up and down like a kid on Christmas morning because I know how powerful the offer is. But then sometimes I remember that, like, maybe sometimes I'm not explaining it so everybody gets it. Maybe sometimes I'm not expressing the value of it and what it does for you and how it collapses time for you between events, between where you are and what you want. And maybe I'm not that great sometimes, although I think I am most of the time, at being able to relate. You know, in marketing, we're supposed to talk about features and benefits, but I'm just talking about relating, like, what do you look like when you come out of the other side of this teaching? And sometimes I forget that, like, not everybody gets it and sees it the way that I do. I'm aware that my mind works a little differently. So that's why I created this PDF, so that you can see it, so it can be laid out. And you understand through this PDF of decoding, again, your EQ sphere and how it relates to your culture sphere. Again, with the Venus sequence overlapping and holographically mapping with the Pearl sequence, it can show you where your own emotional wounding inhibits your ability to connect and communicate with others and how that's unique to you. So this is not a cookie cutter thing. Even though the PDF reads in, you know, steps that are just like very neutral and impartial, but if you take that, apply it to your particular hologenetic profile, it's a whole different story. It's a story of you. It's very unique. So it's not a one size fits all. It's not a cookie cutter approach. And, you know, teaching the gene keys can, you know, unless we're doing it one-on-one, we lose that personal touch. But this is the way to kind of close that gap. So you have this personal touch. And it also gives you a really good way to see what we're doing in Flourish program. So, you know, your EQ, just to say this in closing so you know how valuable this is, your EQ governs how safely and fluidly you can stay present with your own discomfort, as well as others' discomfort, okay? And your level of emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, when you see it through the expressions of shadow and gift and siddhi frequencies, you see how those play out. And when you see how those play out, you know, it can show you, especially with your shadow, it shows you how you might avoid some way, or in many ways, emotional turbulence, how you unconsciously block deeper intimacy, visibility, and your own leadership. So those of you who are conscious creators, those of you who are self-led in your business, you're an entrepreneur that's more spiritually based, this is absolutely for you. This is definitely for you. And, you know, it's because prosperity flows where relationships are based on trust and shared values. The more you're operating from a higher level of emotional maturity, the easier that is. And your culture sphere shows what kind of environments, what kind of people, what kind of interactions activate your highest service, and where that's easy for you. Where the level of ease of just being you equates with the kind of abundance of flow that you've been asking for. You know, the right clients you're magnetizing, the right situations, opportunities, etc. So the full breakdown of how to decode these spheres in your own profile, I've made it for you. It's called Mapping the Archetypes of the Two Spheres of EQ and Culture. And like I said, this is created to be kind of impartial and neutral so that you can apply this to any of your spheres. It's the same steps. And this is just a glimpse, a glimmer, an amuse-bouche, if you will, of what we will be doing in Flourish program. So I've shared this as a free PDF when you sign up to my email list. If you're already on my email list, it's going out tonight. We're doing this in the upcoming Flourish program. It starts on the 24th of April. We're going to do this with taking the Venus sequence and mapping it with the Pearl sequence, literally seeing how you know, your core wound, your core wounding, how you're still operating in shadow, how you've still, you know, you're still navigating in life through a closed heart, how that's keeping you from greater prosperity, and then how to shift that. This is really like nothing you've ever experienced with your gene keys, because I don't know anyone else who's teaching them this way. And it's right on time too, because, you know, those who are called to collaborate and connect with new human leadership to lead with that level, they're being called up. You're probably noticing you're being called up. You're being invited to lead in a more heart-centered way with greater compassion, greater empathy, greater empathic understanding. That's all in alignment with the synarchy of New Earth, which is a concept that Richard Rudd talks about in great detail, especially in the 55th gene key, which happens to be in my profile. It's a pretty profound one. And so the upshot of doing this work is that, you know, taking heed of this invitation and then following that call where it leads you. This particular program, even just getting this PDF. Do you need this program? No, you don't need anything. Is it going to help you if you're feeling this call to greater leadership with greater compassion and empathic understanding? Absolutely. But maybe that's not in the cards for you right now. Maybe it's not something that you have the money for, or you don't know me and you're like, I don't know, who is this? Who is this clown? Why would I want to work with her? That's fine. You can get the PDF because it's going to be incredibly powerful. So I'm not going to gatekeep that. I'm showing you what I'm doing in this program, and in a way that it works for you and you can apply to your hologenetic profile, your own life and your own business right now. And all of this, you know, whether you just do the PDF or you decide to come on board the Flourish program, it leads us all to greater power, passion, purpose, and prosperity when we lead from the heart. And everything you need to know about this particular decoding, this mapping sequence that I'm going to share with you, these archetypes of the two spheres of the EQ and culture, it's in the PDF. Just have to go to katherinemissel.com and boop, you'll see a little light box pop up on my homepage, and you sign up there and you'll have it easy peasy, instant access. And there's details in that PDF if you want to come join us in Flourish program. So I hope this message finds you well. Lots of love to you all. Peace and blessings until next time.